All right. Today I've got Alex Clark with me from A. Clark Inspections. How you doing today, Alex?
Yeah, doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on, Ty.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and your business.
I'm the owner and inspector at A. Clark Inspections, as well as the mold inspector KC. Certified home inspector. I do home inspections, mold, radon, termite, and sewer scopes here in the Kansas City area. I've been in business for about 2 years now, and hopefully this next year I'll be able to grow my business out a little bit more and hire a few more people on.
Oh, that sounds great. So tell me what kind of a like certifications does a great mold inspector need?
So what I did is I went through INTRNACHI, which is the Association of Home Inspectors, and I did their full training, which I believe was probably about, I believe it was about 10 hours of training. It teaches you all about different types of mold, how to inspect for it, how it grows, kind of the whole life cycle of what mold is and what it does. And then I trained with another inspector on like the proper procedures to actually do mold inspections in the field.
Ah, awesome. How long did you train with that, doing in the field? Is that like a
Um,
residency for like doctors?
Sorry, saying.
I said, how long did you train in the field with somebody? Is that kind of like going to residencies like a doctor would do before mold?
Um, So for home inspections, I accompanied a inspector for about 40 inspections. For mold inspections, it was around 5 or 6. But a lot of the stuff overlaps because we also study moisture intrusion, we study air quality, a few things like that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. All right, so I have a couple kind of inspection related questions and mold
Mhm.
inspection related questions for you. So when I have a client that sees that they have mold, can you kind of explain the process of getting in contact with you and just the mold inspection process?
So for doing the inspection process, if you want to book it, we have booking on our website, or you can just call or text, whichever works easier. But the process only takes about 30 minutes. We use these little air cassette samples. It pulls in about 75 liters of air per sample. And then we'll send that off to the lab and they'll tell us what kinds of mold there are. If it's toxic, if it's just a generic allergen, they'll give us the mold test on about 17 different types of molds that they check for. And they'll give us an explanation on what each type of mold is, if it's known to be toxic, if it's just a normal mold, or if there's a difference between indoor and outdoor air quality.
Oh, that's interesting. So is there any particular place that you put that tester around the house, or can it just kind of be anywhere?
So we normally try to spread them out. So if there's a basement, we'll put one in the basement, we'll put one on the main level. If there's a second floor, we'll go up there as well. But we try to spread them out. We do about one test per 800 square feet. And then we'll do one outside, and the outside one will tell us if there's a difference between indoor air quality and outdoor air quality. So we usually try to spread them out a bit, or if there's an area of concern, like if there was a water leak somewhere, we'll do one specifically in that area as well. But we'll normally do about 3 samples per house.
Awesome. So are there any at-home, self-testing situations or products that homeowners can buy, or do you want to kind of just go straight to an inspector if you see mold?
Um, I would recommend going to an inspector because we're trained to know what to look for. There's a few other things of like areas that can cause mold or conducive conditions that the mold tests won't tell you. Some of the at-home ones will simply say it's mold. Mold is, there's over 100,000 varieties of mold, so it won't really specifically tell you what type and if it's toxic or not toxic or what's going on.
Okay, so generally black mold is the toxic type of mold.
So molds come in all different kinds of colors. Just because it's black doesn't mean it's toxic. Without testing it, we can't really tell you what it is. That's why we send it off to the lab. The toxic mold is actually called Stachybotrys. That's the one that we're usually throwing up a red flag for if we see it. And that's usually because there's some kind of water intrusion somewhere that's given it a conducive situation to grow in.
Awesome. Okay. So we have mold and we call
Mhm.
you and you come out, are there different types of like testing that you do? Like I know that you showed me that the air sample one. Is there any other types of testing that you would do?
So the air sample is our preferred one because it's the most accurate. It tells us how much mold spores are in the air and what types. We can also do swabs as well as a biotape, but that'll just specifically tell us what type of mold is in a specific area. So if you see mold growing on a wall and you want to know what specific type that is, then we can do either the biotape or the swab on that. But it doesn't really tell us how much is in the air or if anything else is going on with it.
Okay. So, I got mold. Would you recommend remediation or removal?
It really depends on what kind of mold it is and how bad it is. Remediation and removal are pretty similar. It usually just involves trying to get the mold out and solving what the problem is. So if there's a water leak, we want to try to get that dealt with first. If there's water coming in from outside, or if there's something causing the mold, we want to deal with that as well.
So as a mold inspector, do you also do the remediation or removal, or would that be a separate company?
Our company doesn't do the remediation. We try to stay as an objective third party. So we're not going to try to upsell you on anything else other than we're just there to test.
And that's probably for just quality control, just to make sure everybody's doing, like you said, we're not selling a product. You're
Yeah.
just trying to go in there, get the information, and then, do you come back after the other person does the remediation or removal and retest?
We do recommend retesting just to make sure that all the mold has been removed.
Okay, awesome. So when I have you scheduled to come out, how do I, as a homeowner, prepare for this mold inspection?
The best thing to do is to just keep the house in a livable condition and not to open any windows. If you open windows, all those mold spores are just going to go outside, and we're basically going to be testing outdoor air, and you're not going to get an accurate result.
Okay. So Alex, can you tell me how I can find hidden mold in my house?
Find any spots that are wet on your walls. If it's a water leak behind a sink or a window that's been leaking, that's most likely where there's going to be mold. The easiest way is just to look with a flashlight, and sometimes you'll see a wet spot. Other than that, it's really hard to tell because mold likes to hide in dark, damp areas that are kind of stale. So they're a little hard to spot. Usually, if there's mold, you'll have some breathing issues, sinus issues, some allergy issues. You'll start feeling those first. And that's how you usually figure out that there's mold.
Great. So when I have after you come out and test my property for mold and we have, it's a positive test for mold, or is there a scale of what's okay and what's not okay?
So there's about 17 different types of mold that we'll test for. Some are more, some will react more to you than others. Some of them are just normal allergens. Some of them are more toxic. If it's in low amounts, sometimes it's easy to just visually look for. If it's in a higher numbers, our lab will tell us, and then we can proceed with, like, if it's a bad one, then we'll go for mold remediation and have someone who knows what they're looking for come in.
Okay. And then so when we have this remediation company or removal company come in, is the homeowner responsible for any material disposal, or will they take care of that?
The remediation company will usually deal with all of that themselves.
When I have this remediation company come out and do the remediation or the removal of the mold spots, how do I know that the mold won't return?
Well, mold usually needs moisture and an organic food source to grow. So as long as those two conditions aren't at the same time, then mold won't come back. So as long as we deal with the leaks and we get rid of the mold that's there, then you shouldn't have another problem.
Great.
But that's why we recommend retesting later, just to make sure that it hasn't come back.
Perfect. And so when you say organic material, is drywall organic material?
Yeah, the paper on drywall is organic. Sometimes it can grow in different types of insulation, or if something food-wise got in there, it can grow on that as well.
I assume wood too, just on
Sometimes
stud.
on wood, if it holds the moisture enough, you can get certain types of mold growth on it.
So Alex, I was wondering, can my buyer get a home mold test kit and will it be reliable?
They can get their own test kits. I can't say whether it's reliable or not. Usually some of those test kits will simply say yes or no to mold, but they won't tell you what type of mold or the quantities in the house.
Okay, so you can get a test kit, visually see that you have mold, and the test kit's going to confirm you have mold.
They'll say, yes, you have mold, but it won't say, is it toxic? Is it just an allergen? Like I was saying, there's over 100,000 different types of mold, and mold is actually necessary for life here because mold helps break down all kinds of other products. So without mold, life is kind of unsustainable.
Oh, that's very interesting. So it's kind of a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, it's just whether there's too much of an unhealthy mold.
So you mentioned a little bit about black mold. Is that the most toxic mold that you can have in your house? And I know you said there's a couple different colors, but can you tell me a little bit more about black mold?
So black mold is not quite the name we like to use. It's more toxic, or known as stachybotrys. And that's the one most people call black mold. That's the one that releases toxic spores into the air, and that's the one that will give people breathing issues, sinus issues, sinus congestion. That'll give you more health issues than anything else. And that one usually grows because of some kind of water infiltration.
What kind of health effects can black mold give somebody?
It can be anywhere from a runny nose to sinus congestion, sneezing, coughing, itchy eyes, headaches, migraines, sore throat. It can be shortness of breath, wheezing, and sometimes up to asthma attacks if it's strong enough and if your body is sensitive enough to it.
Okay. Now, would there be any kind of seasonality with that, like there is with seasonal allergies? Will mold kind of kick up in the hot season?
There are some molds that will grow more with the right temperature setting conditions. They like their warm, damp areas. So if it's too cold, they won't usually grow. And some of them like growing outside on organic matter. And if it's too cold, they'll just go dormant.
Okay. And then they'll resurface once the conditions become favorable for that mold.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about mold is you can't actually kill mold. You can just make it go dormant or remove it.
Okay, that's really interesting. So should I be concerned with mold if it's not black? Does the color really matter?
Mold can come in any different kind of colors. I've seen black, white, gray, red, orange, green, blue. Mold can be any color at once. The color doesn't really tell you what type it is. So if it's mold, we want to test it and see what's causing it.
Okay. So I know we kind of touched a little bit about, you're a third party and not the mold remediation or removal. Wouldn't it be cheaper to hire a company that does both the remediation and testing?
Sometimes it can be cheaper. The reason we do it as an objective third party is because we don't want to upsell you on it. But some of the remediation companies actually will sub it out for that same reason. They want to have an objective person come in and tell them whether or not there is more mold left.
All right. Well, I really appreciate the meeting today. And then I'll be sure and put your contact info down here. So thanks a lot for coming out and giving us an informational talk about mold.
Okay, thanks, Ty.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.